Welcome to the study on the French Revolution and Romanticism. This study is part of the discussions related to the complementary course, The Evolution of Literary Movements, prescribed for Semester 4, BA English Language and Literature. In this lecture, the focus will be on pages 9 to 15 of the textbook Cross Currents. A broad outline of the study will be the French socio-political and religious situations, the Enlightenment movement, Romanticism, and impact of Enlightenment and Romanticism upon England. In this first lecture, we'll discuss the situations of France, its society, its religion, its politics, and come to think of the emergence of new strains of thought in France. Our study focuses on the 18th century France. A background of France. Let's move back to the 2nd century BC when France or parts of France were occupied by the Romans. In the 5th century AD, the Germanic Franks established power in the region, and this Frankish dominance continues for centuries. Power reaches its heights in the time of Charlemagne or Charles the Great. Moving to the 14th and 15th centuries, the Hundred Years' War. We understand the 100 Years' War to be a fight between England and France, but it's actually a fight between two families. A series of war between the House of Valois and the House of Plantagenet, which is also known as the House of Anjou. A fight for the French throne, which had become vacant upon the extinction of the senior Capetian line of French kings. So the House of Valois claimed the title of the King of France. The Plantagenets, they were already the rulers of England. They also made this claim for France. The Plantagenet kings of England were the 12th century rulers of England, and they had their roots in the French regions of Anjou and Normandy. The 100 Years' War ended with the victory of the Valois in 1453, solidifying the power of the ancient regime as a highly centralized absolute monarchy. Please note the spelling of the word ancient. It is different from the English spelling. Here we don't have the T. So from the 15th century, let's move to the 16th, when France emerges as a colonial power. And in the late 18th century, monarchy and associated institutions were overthrown in the French Revolution. So this is the background from the 2nd century BC, 5th century AD, 14th and 15th centuries AD, 16th century AD, and the late 18th century AD. Now focusing on the 18th century, the French society in the 18th century. Under the ancient regime, the society was divided into three estates. The first estate, the clergy, second, the nobility, and the third, the commoners. The king was beyond this. He was not considered part of any estate. And the third estate, that is the commoners, they were under the oppression of the first two, the nobility and the clergy. So there was a huge gap between the privileged and the underprivileged. Not only that, there was also a gap inside the first estate between the upper and lower strata of the clergy. The peasants were burdened by obligations and taxation. You may refer to page 11 of the textbook where you have a table given there. The peasants had to pay money to the state, the church, and the nobility. And another problem in France was the extravagance and incompetence of the monarchs. The response to all these situations was the contradictory currents of thought. The Enlightenment and the Romantic movement that converged into a crucial political event, the French Revolution. The French Revolution is considered as the triggering point of the Romantic movement. റൊമാൻറ്റിക് മൂവ്മെന്റിനെ കുറിച്ച് പൊതുവായ ഒരു അണ്ടർസ്റ്റാൻഡിംഗ് നമ്മുടെ മനസ്സിൽ വരുന്നത് ഇംഗ്ലണ്ടിലെ റൊമാൻറ്റിക് മൂവ്മെന്റ്, വേർഡ്സ്വർത്ത്, ഷെല്ലി, കീറ്റ്സ്, ബൈറൺ ഇങ്ങനെയൊക്കെയാണ്. But the Romantic movement really sprouted in France. Enlightenment upheld reason and argued that rational acts and rational thought could ensure happiness. But Romanticism was antithetical to this and held emotion dearer. But this did not weaken the French society's progress towards the French Revolution. The Enlightenment. The Age of Enlightenment, or simply the Enlightenment or the Age of Reason, was an elite cultural movement of intellectuals in the 18th century Europe. This is not just limited to France. This sought to mobilize the power of reason in order to reform society and advance knowledge. The Enlightenment flourished until about 1790 to 1800, after which the emphasis on reason gave way to Romanticism's emphasis on emotion, and a counter-Enlightenment, Romanticism, gained force. The major figures of the Enlightenment came from England. We mentioned that it's a European phenomenon. But the movement truly exploded in France, which was the hotbed of political and intellectual thoughts in the 1700s. The roots of this French Enlightenment lay largely in the resentment and discontent over the decadence of the French monarchy in the late 1600s. Situations of the French society provoked her people and prepared their minds for an influx of new thoughts. Speaking about the rulers, we have Louis XIV, known as the Sun King, a wildly extravagant king. At this time, during his time, the people who were discontent, the wealthy intellectual elites, began to gather regularly in the Parisian salons, parlors for conversation. And these meetings were hosted by the high society women. And they gathered, had discussions, raised their complaints, shared their problems about the state of their country. After the death of Louis XIV, a far less competent Louis XV took over, and these salons only grew in popularity at this time. So the salons were places where they could share their problems, but the nature of these discussions changed from an idle complaint, whining, into constructive political thought. Especially after the works of John Locke became widespread, participants at the salons began to discuss substantive political and social philosophies of the day. Before long, the cutting-edge thought in a variety of disciplines worked its way into the salons, and the French Enlightenment was born. വിവിധങ്ങളായ പുതിയ പുതിയ ആശയങ്ങൾ ഇവിടെ ചർച്ചയ്ക്ക് വന്നു. രാഷ്ട്രീയം മാത്രമല്ല ഇവിടെ ചിന്തിക്കുന്നത്. Philosophy, literature, all these areas were discussed in the salons, So the French Enlightenment owes much of its origin and existence to these salons. It was a time of intellectual dynamism, and this free floating of ideas had the potential to crystallize into a definite form. They were powerful, capable of moving masses into rebellion, which saw its climax in the French Revolution. The trajectory of enlightenment shows a movement from a revulsion of corruption towards an affirmation of liberty, equality, and fraternity, the slogans of the French Revolution. So, the Enlightenment is a movement aiming at liberating man from ignorance and superstition and instilling faith in human powers. The point of literacy. Complementing and enabling the socially and politically active atmosphere was the dramatically improving literacy rate in France. More and more French people, especially in Paris and surrounds, were reading and writing about revolutionary ideas. So there is a symbiotic relationship. റീഡേഴ്സിന് പുതിയ പുതിയ കാര്യങ്ങൾ വായിക്കുവാനായിട്ട് വേണം. So they depended on, they awaited more literature from the philosophers. And the writers, the philosophers, because of the response, the warm response they got from the readers, they were compelled to write more. And even the French women, they had, very often they were limited to the role of hostesses, but they too had an opportunity to contribute to the conversation. Now let's see some key names connected with the Enlightenment. I've given a few alphabets there. Each of these indicates to one name, a writer or a thinker of the period, not just limited to France. So you can pause for a moment, take a paper, take a sheet of paper, and you can refer to the text. Try to identify the names indicated here through the alphabets. You can make an attempt without looking into the text if you have already read the text. And you can improve your performance going through pages 10, 11, 12 or till page number 50. So it's your time now. You can pause the video for a moment. So you have the names here. More about the philosophers. We mentioned about the popularity of the salons in the early 1700s. The coffee shops, the salons, and other social groups were popping up all over Paris, encouraging intellectual discussion regarding the political and philosophical status of the country. And as we mentioned just now, members of these groups increasingly clamored to read the latest works of the leading philosophers. So these non-traditional thinkers came to be known as the philosophers. On page number 14, it is mentioned how they are different from the earlier philosophers like Plato. So the philosophers formed a group that championed the personal liberties and the works of Locke and Newton, denounced Christianity, actively opposed the abusive governments found throughout Europe. ഒന്ന് പേഴ്സണൽ ലിബർട്ടീസിനെ ചലഞ്ച് ചെയ്യുന്നു, ചാമ്പ്യൻ ചെയ്യുന്നു. പേഴ്സണൽ ലിബർട്ടീസ് ഇല്ലാത്ത ഒരു സമൂഹത്തിന് വേണ്ടി അവർ സംസാരിക്കണം. And they trusted the ideas spread by Locke and Newton. രണ്ടാമത് അതാണ് ശ്രദ്ധിക്കേണ്ടത്. John Locke and Isaac Newton, we consider them to be the scholars who inspired many of the philosophers. മൂന്നാമത്, they denounced Christianity. And the fourth point, they opposed abusive governments. ജനങ്ങളെ ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടിക്കുന്ന ഭരണകൂടങ്ങൾക്കെതിരെ അവർ ശബ്ദമുയർത്തി. They differed in many ways in their thinking, but generally they came from similar schools of thought. They were writers, journalists, and teachers who were confident that the human society could be improved through rational thought. Enlightenment പഠിക്കുമ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ വളരെ ശ്രദ്ധിക്കുന്ന ഒരു പോയിന്റ്, ആദ്യത്തെ ഒരു പോയിന്റ് ആണ് റീസൺ, റാഷണൽ തോട്ട്. അതിൽ നിന്നുള്ള ഒരു ഷിഫ്റ്റ് ആണ് റൊമാൻറ്റിസിസം അപ്ഹോൾഡ് ചെയ്യുന്ന ഇമോഷൻസ്. അപ്പം ഈ രണ്ട് പോയിന്റുകൾ നമ്മളുടെ പഠനത്തിൽ വളരെ ശ്രദ്ധേയമായിരിക്കും. ഒരു ഭാഗത്ത് റീസൺ, മറുഭാഗത്ത് ഇമോഷൻ. ഇതിനെ രണ്ടിനെയും അഡ്വക്കേറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്ന സ്കോളേഴ്സ്, ഫിലോസഫേഴ്സ് ഉണ്ട്. നമ്മളിവിടെ പറഞ്ഞു ഫിലോസഫേഴ്സ് ദേ denounced the doctrines of the church or denounced Christianity. Let's see something more of that. Philosophers and the church. A large part of the philosophers' attacks were focused on the church and its traditions. But that doesn't mean that the philosophers were atheists. നിരീശ്വരവാദികളല്ലായിരുന്നു. Many of the prominent philosophers were deists. They believed in God. They believed in an all-powerful being. But ദൈവത്തെക്കുറിച്ചുള്ള അവരുടെ സങ്കല്പം ഇറ്റ്സ് that of a cosmic watchmaker. ഒരു വാച്ച് നിർമ്മിക്കുന്ന ഒരാള്. ഈ കാലത്ത് ഇത് ഫാക്ടറികൾ, കമ്പനികളൊക്കെയാണ് വാച്ചുകൾ ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്നത്. പഴയ കാലത്ത് ഇൻഡിവിജ്വൽസ് were involved in making watches and clocks. അപ്പോൾ ഒരു വാച്ച് മേക്കർ ഒരു ക്ലോക്ക് ഉണ്ടാക്കി അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു വാച്ച് ഉണ്ടാക്കി കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ he will take his hands off that. അത് പിന്നീട് ആരെങ്കിലും മേടിക്കുന്നു, അവര് അത് ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നു. ഈ വാച്ച് മേക്കർ അതിന്റെ പുറകെ അതിന് കേടുണ്ടോ എന്ന് അന്വേഷിച്ച് പോകാറില്ല. So according to the belief of many of the philosophers, there is a divine being, an all-powerful being. He is like a cosmic watchmaker who simply sets the universe in autonomous motion and never again tampered with it. The philosophers also disdained the organized religion and the church's traditional idea of the chain of being. Church believe ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു കാര്യമാണ്. There's a chain. ഏറ്റവും മുകളിലെ ദൈവം, പിന്നീട് the angels. But when it comes down, God first, then angels, then monarchs, then aristocrats, and so on. The philosophers also raised objections against the decadent lifestyles of leading church representatives, and also the church's persistence in collecting exorbitant taxes and tithes. ചൈത്രം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് നമ്മുടെ വരുമാനത്തിന്റെ 10% നിർബന്ധമായും ചേർച്ചിന് കൊടുക്കണം എന്ന് പറയുന്നു. അപ്പൊ അതുപോലെ ചേർച്ചിന്റെ റെപ്രസെന്റേറ്റീവ്സിന്റെ ജീവിത രീതികൾ, ആഡംബരവും മറ്റ് പ്രശ്നങ്ങളും എല്ലാം ഉള്ള ജീവിത രീതികളെ ഫിലോസഫേഴ്സ് ഒബ്ജക്റ്റ് ചെയ്തു. ഇതിനെല്ലാം അപ്പുറമായിട്ട് what the philosophers found most appalling was the control that the church held over impressionable commoners by instilling in them a fear of eternal damnation. Church എങ്ങനെയാണ് ആൾക്കാരെ കൺട്രോൾ ചെയ്യുന്നത്? നിങ്ങളെല്ലാം മരണത്തിന് ശേഷം ഒരിക്കലും രക്ഷപ്പെടാത്ത ഒരു ഡാമിനേഷനിലേക്ക് പോകും unless you obey us. So the philosophers objected to such teachings. The philosophers may have mixed feelings about the common people. അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് ചിലര് ഫ്രഞ്ച് റെവല്യൂഷനെ എൻകറേജ് ചെയ്തു, ചിലര് ഒപ്പോസ് ചെയ്തു. But they were united in their strong feelings against the church. As a result, they provoked the church by challenging doctrines such as the existence of miracles and divine revelation, and often disproving specific tenets with simple science. These philosophers, they had a scientific background, many of them. So they challenged the miracles and certain practices of the church through science. So naturally, the church in turn hated the philosophers and all they stood for. We mentioned that the Enlightenment was triggered off by thinkers in England. Two names are mentioned here: Sir Isaac Newton. We know Isaac Newton, his principles about gravity and all. So, what does he speak there? Isaac Newton's gravity principle നോക്കുമ്പോൾ nature obeys certain fundamental laws. So, when an apple breaks off its connection with the tree, there is a natural law of gravity and the apple falls down. So, how can we understand nature or control nature? Through an understanding of these laws and principles of nature. So, human nature also can be understood. It can be scientifically studied and improved. ഇതാണ് ഐസക് ന്യൂട്ടൺ ആർഗ്യൂ ചെയ്തത്. പ്രപഞ്ചത്തിലെ കാര്യങ്ങൾ നമുക്ക് പഠിച്ചാൽ ഇംപ്രൂവ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുമെങ്കിൽ മനുഷ്യന്റെ സ്വഭാവവും മനുഷ്യന്റെ നേച്ചറും നമുക്ക് ആ വിധത്തിൽ തന്നെ പഠിക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ഇംപ്രൂവ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും. ചേർച്ചിന്റെ ഡോക്ടറിന് നേരെ എതിരാണ്. ചേർച്ച് പറയുന്ന ചില തത്വങ്ങളിൽ കൂടെ മാത്രമേ മനുഷ്യർ പോകാൻ പറ്റുള്ളൂ. So this feeling gave an optimism at the time of the Enlightenment. John Locke advocate ചെയ്യുന്നു the value of human dignity. A person can be in charge of his destiny. Human beings could construct an adequate conception of the universe. പ്രകൃതിയെക്കുറിച്ച് നമുക്ക് പഠിക്കുവാനായിട്ട് സാധിക്കും. അതേ സിസ്റ്റമാറ്റിക് അണ്ടർസ്റ്റാൻഡിംഗ് വി ക്യാൻ അപ്ലൈ ടു ദ ഹ്യൂമൻ പേഴ്സൺ ഓൾസോ. ന്യൂട്ടൺ പറഞ്ഞ ഐഡിയയുമായിട്ട് വളരെ സാമ്യമുള്ളതാണ്. അപ്പോൾ അങ്ങനെ നമ്മളുടെ തന്നെ നിയന്ത്രണം നമ്മളിലേക്ക് വരുമ്പോൾ വി ക്യാൻ ബി ഇൻ ചാർജ് ഓഫ് ആർ ഡെസ്റ്റിനി. ജോൺ ലോക്കിന്റെ ഒരു പ്രിൻസിപ്പിൾ ആണ് ദ ടാബുല റാസ, എ ടേബിൾ that is clean, a blank slate. So the mind is a tabula rasa, a blank slate. All our knowledge originates from experience. So on this tabula rasa, the imprints are made by experience. Let's wind up the first lecture here, requesting you to go through the textbook till page number 15. Thank you.